I never imagined myself in this situation. Falling for a married man was something I never thought I would do, but life has a way of throwing surprises your way. It started innocently enough. We worked on a project together, spending hours collaborating and exchanging ideas. As the days turned into weeks, our conversations began to drift from professional to personal. I remember the way his eyes would light up when he laughed, the warmth in his voice when he spoke to me, and how his presence made even the most mundane tasks enjoyable. Before I knew it, I found myself drawn to his warmth and humor. There was something so genuine about him, an authenticity that was rare to find. As our friendship grew deeper, there were small moments that brought us closer together. I remember the day we stayed late after work, sitting in an empty conference room, sharing stories about our childhoods. He spoke about his dreams, the things that made him feel alive, and the struggles he faced in his marriage. He opened up about how distant things had become at home, how they were more like roommates than partners. His vulnerability in that moment made me see him in a different light. It was as if he had let me into a part of his world that no one else could see. It wasn't long before our connection spilled beyond the confines of work. We started meeting for coffee on weekends, finding solace in each other's company away from prying eyes. One Sunday afternoon, we drove out to a quiet park on the edge of town. We sat on a bench overlooking the lake, and as the sun began to set, he turned to me, his eyes filled with a mix of longing and uncertainty. He told me he had never felt this way about anyone in years, that being with me made him realize how much he had been missing in his life. He reached for my hand, and in that moment, everything else faded away. I knew, deep down, that this was something more than just a passing infatuation. The more time we spent together, the more we realized how much we meant to each other. He began to talk about a future where we could be together without secrets. He shared his fears of hurting his children, of the unknown, but also his hopes. He promised me that he would do whatever it took to make this work, that I was worth the risk. It wasn't an easy promise to make, and I knew the road ahead would be full of challenges. But in that moment, as we sat by the lake with the sky painted in hues of orange and pink, I believed him. I believed in us. He would share stories about his life, his dreams, and even his fears. And each time, I felt a deeper connection forming between us. In my heart, I wanted to believe he felt the same way, that this bond we were creating was more than just a fleeting connection. In the beginning, it felt like we were building something real. He made promises that painted a picture of a future together, one where we could finally be open, where I wouldn't have to hide in the shadows. He talked about separating from his wife, saying that their marriage had been over for years. He said I made him feel alive again, and I wanted so badly to believe that was true. He would call me late at night after his family had gone to bed. He would listen to me talk about my day, laugh at my stories, and say that he wished he could be there with me instead. There were moments when I felt like I was the only person in the world who truly mattered to him. When we were together, the rest of the world seemed to fade away. He made me feel cherished, like I was someone special. Over time, things began to change. The reality of our situation weighed on both of us, but instead of drifting apart, we found strength in each other. He took the steps he needed to separate from his wife, and those steps were anything but simple. He faced countless sleepless nights, agonizing over how to break the news to his family. I remember the night he finally told his wife. He called me afterward, his voice shaking with emotion, torn between relief and heartbreak. He moved out of the family home, renting a small apartment where he could start fresh. There were moments when he felt like giving up. The guilt was overwhelming, and the backlash from friends and family was harsh. But he pushed forward, determined to be with me. He started the divorce process, which was fraught with heated arguments and painful compromises. He faced the judgment of those around him, but he never wavered in his commitment to us. He made me a part of his life in a way that felt real and lasting, inviting me to be there through every step, sharing his fears and his hopes as we built a new future together. There were still challenges, of course. The guilt of breaking up a family lingered, and I often questioned if what we were doing was truly right. But he reassured me, reminding me that his marriage had ended long before we met and that what we had was something worth fighting for. Slowly, I started to believe that too. We sought counseling together, worked through the difficult emotions, and built a new life, one that included both of us, openly and honestly. The day he introduced me to his family was one of the most emotional days of my life. It was a mixture of fear and hope, but it went better than I could have imagined. His children were cautious, but over time they warmed up to me. We took things slow, respecting everyone's feelings, and eventually we found a balance that worked for all of us. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and it felt right. Looking back now, I see that loving him taught me a lot about myself, about what I want, what I need, and what I deserve. It wasn't the fairy tale love I had hoped for, but it was real, and it shaped me in ways I am still coming to understand. I learned that true love isn't about waiting in the shadows. It's about being seen, valued, and chosen every single day. And now I have that. We have built a life together, one filled with love, honesty, and growth. The journey wasn't easy, and the price was high, but in the end, it was worth it. I have the love of my life by my side, and I wouldn't trade that for anything.